Well, hello everybody. How y'all doing? It is a cold and rainy day here in New Zealand, but still beautiful and kind of moody. This is my eighth video, kind of about my new book. This one is specifically about ayahuasca and my most recent ayahuasca ceremony that happened in Costa Rica. I went to a place called Rythmia, where you have four ayahuascas in a row over four consecutive nights, and it's really something else. Uh, Actually, I sent the book off to the publisher like 2 days before this ayahuasca, and I talk about ayahuasca in this book as well, because I've had three prior to this. Actually, I talk about many various drugs that I've experimented with, and the differences between them, and also really like I think when I started using them, maybe I didn't. Not until I turned age 40 did I even like drink alcohol or have any drugs at all. So I approached it with this kind of really logical, mathematical, computer science kind of mind, right? And I think when I got started, I did it more like to party and have fun. But now, really, I do it almost exclusively to go on spiritual experiences. And there's no more spiritual experience than ayahuasca. Uh, the first three I did um, were amazing, and everyone is different, by the way. It's not a picnic, This is not a fun day at the park, you know. And I had such transformative experiences, and it helps you like purge trauma, some trauma that's not even your own, some stuff that's hidden away in there, repressed stuff. Um, but like I went up to my shaman at the end, my shaman, he was everybody's shaman, and he was such a cool dude, and I was like thanking him. I was like, oh, that was amazing, thank you so much. Like it was really transformative and eye-opening and just wonderful, transcendent even. And then he was like, no, you're the one that did all the work. I was like, yeah, that's true, I suppose. And then I just kept showering him with praise and like, you're such a gift, thank you so much. And then he just sat there like with these half-lidded eyes, and he goes, I'm just a rock in the river. I was like, man, that makes you even more cool. What a cool thing to say. All right, so let's get into it here. Oh, by the way, the book is getting really good reviews. They're starting to come in on Amazon, so be sure to get your review in there too. Yes, I'm looking at you. Now, I think what I'll do, because this is kind of a long topic to talk about these 4 days in Costa Rica. Actually, I was in Costa Rica for a whole month, but these 4 nights of ayahuasca, I'll probably split this into 2 videos. So, day 1, I'll do day 1 and day 2 in this video, and the next video I'll do day 3 and day 4. Okay. And you'll want to see the second one because we talk about some really weird surgeries with aliens and stuff like that. Some pretty cool stuff, which happens. It's quite common, actually. There's many reports of it down there. It's not that common. It's rare to get an alien surgery, but that's just one aspect. I don't want to steal my own thunder. Okay, let me set the scene for you here. So this is a pretty posh ayahuasca place. It's called Rythmia, and it's in Costa Rica. And it's kind of like a little resort, They've got like a really nice saltwater pool. They have nice rooms with air conditioning and beds, and they fresh towels, and it's really quite nice. They've got beautiful grounds and gardens and places you can go meditate. And it's not just a place to go drink the medicine at night, but they have many like classes during the daytime to help you integrate, to answer your questions, like the science behind it, how it's working, what different people's experiences are, like how to interpret what just happened to you. So that was quite fascinating to me because even though I knew a lot about it, having done it 3 times, I learned a lot more. And I'll share some of that as I tell these stories. And they also have like amazing food there. It was really good. And it was really tasty. you know, you can't eat after 12 noon on the nights you drink the medicine because you need to have an empty stomach when you go in there, because it's just part of the process, right? Also, notice that I call it a medicine, and that's what they call it too. They call it a drug. I think a lot of people that don't know much about drugs, they just kind of group everything in there together, right? And, you know, they might say like, oh, ayahuasca, mushrooms, cocaine, heroin, meth, it's all just the same kind of thing. No, it's not the same kind of thing at all. Like, I've never tried heroin or meth. I don't plan on doing it either. It actually sounds pretty awesome, at least for a while. But no, I kind of stick to ayahuasca and maybe mushrooms on occasion to have these little spiritual things. But it's also really, if you break down the words, if you have to categorize things in this Western Socratic reductionist way, like, it's more a medicine. It's definitely a medicine, because drugs, often with a lot of them, each time you have them, you have to have more and more and more to get the same kind of effect, right? And it's the opposite with ayahuasca. As you have ayahuasca, you need less and less and less. Secondly, there's no craving for it, right? You don't wake up the next day like craving some more ayahuasca. You're like, oh no, I gotta do more ayahuasca. And then the third thing is that when you stop taking it, there's no withdrawal. So it doesn't share any of those commonalities with some of the really harmful drugs that are out there. And there are some harmful drugs for sure. And another question I get is from the muggles out there, and I know you're out there, it's all right. You can say what you want and believe what you want. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm just sharing my story. Like, Trey, why are you always like looking outside of yourself for answers? Why are you escaping? And that's actually a really stupid question when it comes to ayahuasca, because ayahuasca is all about going inside. You spend just hours inside, battling your own demons or working through stuff. They say it's like, 8 years of therapy in 8 hours. And it is. It really is. Whereas I do agree with a lot of other drugs, you are looking outside of yourself for satisfaction, whether it's food or alcohol or whatever, I know the difference, believe me. Okay, so let's get going here with night number 1. We actually had a whole full day there ahead of time just to relax and, lay in the pool and kind of get to know each other. It was a great group. We had about 35 people there. Although apparently they often have a lot more, like they can have 80 or 100 people there, but they can handle it. These guys are pros. They have every week they do it over and over again. They've had thousands and tens of thousands of people go through there. So they know what they're doing, right? So night number 1, we kind of had like classes beforehand to kind of prepare everyone for it, because a lot of people were scared, for lack of a better word, which is fine and expected. Like I don't go in scared anymore, but I just go in like with respect for it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm getting into, but strap in, here we go. I'd say 70% of the people there had never done ayahuasca before, and they just didn't know what they were getting into. Some people did. There tended to be a lot of middle-aged people there, a lot of Americans that maybe their life wasn't going really well. That's not a good way to say it, but just they weren't finding satisfaction, or like something was missing, or maybe some people were like drinking too much, or they were depressed, or like life was shitty, and not like this is a last resort, but like maybe traditional therapy or whatever patterns they were stuck in weren't working for them anymore. And this is definitely a way to disrupt those patterns and kind of bring you a sort of enlightenment, if you will. Because I know that as I've done it, like it's made me more open and more loving and kinder and more forgiving, and I just let things go and I go with the flow and more zen. It's made life easier. I'm just more content. I could just go sit out there in a chair and just like stare at the trees and the clouds for like an hour. I'm like, this is nice. Um, yeah. So one thing they do at Rythmia, and perhaps other places, this is only the second example I had because my first three were with the same shaman, the Rock in the River. And they actually have different shamans every night at Rythmia, which is cool. And the reason they do that is they don't want you to, like, not that you would ever like worship one particular shaman, but you might think it's that person that helped you get your breakthroughs, when really it's the medicine. They're there to serve the medicine and guide you. And they encourage you to have as many cups of the ayahuasca as you want to, that you feel that you need. They often say, like, don't think, drink. And I remember my very first ayahuasca, man, I was so out of it and like in pain and writhing and like so many wild visions in my head. And I couldn't even crawl up there to get a second cup. But then I got stronger over time. And so this time I decided ahead of time, like, I'm going to try to get 7 cups. I'm really going for it. I've been through a lot of stuff in the past few years. So let's clean out all that garbage and figure out what's going on. And those of you that have read the book know a little bit about that. So I went up and I immediately asked for 2 cups, and they were happy to give it. So I gulped them down. And this was actually an incredibly rough night. It started out rough and it stayed rough. And different people have different experiences on the different nights. Sometimes, like, about half the people had a great experience, a transcendent experience of their first night, and the next night's down. So there was an interesting vacillation that was going on. So right after you drink it, also, if you want to hear about my first ayahuasca experience, I have an audio podcast about that. I'll link to it below. So right after you drink it, they turn off all the lights and it's like deadly silent, and you can hear all the crickets and frogs outside. It's actually quite cool because you're in the middle of the jungle. Everyone has their own little mattress, right? And you've got your little pillows and your little nest. You have your own bucket because you're going to probably be vomiting into that bucket. And it takes about 35 minutes for the medicine to kick in. So you just kind of sit there and you meditate quietly. And even though there's this group of people around you, you don't talk to anyone else. You can't, like, go check on your buddy or, you know, give him a hug or have a little check-in, because it's a solitary experience. All right. And then after about 35 minutes, you start to hear people vomiting, right? And I probably did it after about an hour. And they start playing music, like beautiful music. Some of the music is live, some is pre-recorded. And the shaman, it's not just this one dude or this one dudette. They have this whole team of people, probably like 10 people, right? And they're kind of seated on either side of him, you know, kind of like Last Supper type situation. Or they're kind of stationed around to help people, right? Because everyone knows where the bathrooms are, because a lot of people's purging is like through the buttocks. So they have to go into the bathroom. And they have a bucket in there because sometimes people are like double-ending it. It gets wild. And the purging is, well, it's a visceral thing, but it's also symbolic. It's the idea of like purging stuff out of you that's not serving you anymore. And something I learned this time in one of those classroom ceremonies is, so when you drink it, it's pretty disgusting. It's like mud, you know, combined with like slurried up insects and like something you left in an old gym bag that doesn't breathe very well. And it's a small cup and it's pretty thick, but it's still liquidy. You drink it down, it's like, oh, it's one of the worst tasting things ever. And a lot of times it's hard to even drink it without immediately vomiting, which is something a lot of people do later in the ceremony when you can't vomit. Sometimes if you just go up and get another cup, that will just force you to vomit. So you take your bucket up to the shaman and you drink it and you're like, oh. Now, a lot of times when you vomit, the consistency of it is like really chunky, like Chef Boyardee, whereas what you drink down is like quite liquidy. And they say what happens is that the medicine goes, you know, into your system, and like it pulls out all this trauma and stuff, which comes out almost like a solid, and that's what you end up vomiting up. I don't know if you've ever read the book The Body Keeps the Score. It's about how a lot of people, or everybody, stores trauma in their body. You know, if you're familiar with Gabor Mate and that sort of thing. There's a funny story about Gabor Mate at Ayahuasca. He held his own Ayahuasca retreat, and he invited a bunch of people. He's quite well known. And they had to remove him from his own retreat because he was so dark. He carried so much darkness in him. And he had his own little one-on-one sessions with the shamans. I don't think that was at Rythmia. That might have been somewhere else. It could have been. I should look that up. So we started around sunset, and we went on probably 5-6 hours. And I kept getting up there to have more medicine, even though I didn't want to, but I knew, like, I'm only here once. I'm going to do it the right way. And I vomited a lot. And it was like black dragon fire. It was like loud. You're trying not to be too loud or anything, but sometimes you just can't help it. And it's so crazy. Sometimes you're listening to the most beautiful song, but you're hearing people vomit all around you. So there's like this duality of like beauty and pain. And it messes with your head in this beautiful way. And it brings up things inside of you as the shaman is singing and other people are singing and you're hearing all these noises. And like, I didn't really have any good visions that night. Like a lot of stuff with my dad, who I actually have a very good relationship with. He passed about 5 years ago. You know, I loved him and he loved me. I was proud of him. He was proud of me. What else can he ask for, right? But like I saw a lot of stuff, like my dad was like decaying and his skin was flaying off and he was just like this pathetic creature that was just like barely surviving. And like I was like, why am I seeing these things? Do I still have unresolved daddy issues or something? So I don't know what was going on with that, but like it kept coming up. But the great thing is, which they told us in these classes, is that when you have these things coming out of you, you don't really have to overinterpret them because it's working on your subconscious. It's not like you have to have, working psychological analysis of exactly what's happening, because it's working itself out and it's coming out of you, right, in a very beautiful way. That's what the medicine is doing. And secondly, you never have that same experience again. So you don't think like, oh no, night 2, I'm gonna have to have more of this stuff. No, that's gone forever. And I can attest to that. I think the last 2 hours were the hardest for me. I was just like, oh, let this thing end. Like I was like moaning and trying not to be, I was trying to keep to myself, but I could hear other people struggling too. And I was like, oh, you're just laying on your mattress and you're kind of like holding yourself. It's like food poisoning times 1,000. And you're like, oh no, this is like, let it end. I was like, can we just organize a group suicide right now? It seems like the only way out. Yeah, so they flipped on the lights around 2 or 3 a.m. and then everyone just kind of got up, and I was really not in a good place. And I was like, I just barely made it back to the room. And I was like, oh, just please some air conditioning, because it was hot in there. You're like sweating, and you're in the middle of this Costa Rican jungle, and you're hearing all these animals outside, and you're like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like, did I sign up for this thing? Did I rope myself into this thing? Yeah. Okay, so that's night number 1. Okay, now night number 2. And this was a really good night, finally. They say, like, after you do the hard work, like, the mother rewards you with a good night for doing all the hard work. And this was a reward night, which I needed because it was a rough day, let me tell you. I barely slept a wink. And even like a week prior to that, I was only sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. And I was pretty worried about it, but there was this one lovely lady that works there named Lola, and I told her, I'm worried, I'm not sleeping. She goes, it's good. The mother doesn't want you to sleep. I was like, okay, good. That made me feel a little bit better. So yeah, even at breakfast, I'm normally like quite chatty and all that stuff, but I was like, oh, I was just like eyes down, and then I kind of just slowly moseyed over to the classroom and just kind of sat there like a zombie. I was like, this is rough, man. How the hell am I gonna do this for 3 more nights? You know, I can't believe I signed up for this thing, but I was in it. You know, I have strong willpower when I want to. Um, so this night when I went up to see the shaman, I only had 2 cups the whole night. That's all I needed, you know, and it was quite strong. And I was a little sick in the beginning, and I went to go into the bathroom, but I was like so constipated. It happened to a few, like it was, I don't know what was going on with me there. Like, do I need to eat more fruit? Like, maybe I shouldn't have had those 17 pancakes for breakfast. Am I going to die like Elvis, you know, with like peanut butter and banana sandwiches on the toilet at Rythmia? Doesn't doesn't seem like a good ayahuasca way to go out. But yeah, I couldn't figure out what to do. Like, I was moving around in there. I did like a whole Pilates class in that bathroom. But anyway, I came back to my little mattress after that failure, and then I started feeling like really good, quite elated, and it was so wonderful. You know, sometimes people get up and dance a little bit around the. There's this little thing full of crystals and a little candle, and people get up there and dance and maintain their own space and stuff like that. And they played such beautiful music this night. Like the first night, the music really has an effect on you, and the way the shaman guides you through the night really has an effect on you. But this night, the night was really beautiful and transcendent, and man, they had this one singer. I mean, it was like a cross between like if Michael Jackson and an angel had a baby. And there's this other like beautiful female bard with this just incredible like high elf voice, and man, the music was just great. And I've since added quite a few little ayahuasca songs to my little playlist. It's great. So on this night, I had a few interesting things happen. I had a surgery from this multi-tentacled creature, right? Later, in the next day when I mentioned what happened to me, because I've never had anything like this happen to me, nor have I ever heard of it, so I kind of like limped in. I said, hey, this weird thing happened with this tentacle creature last night, and I don't know if I'm suddenly into tentacle porn or something, but maybe. And I could feel like the tentacles all, like going all through me and like slithering all around me in little suction cups, like especially all through this area. And I wasn't scared. I just totally trusted. I just kind of felt it going around. And then Lola, who was teaching the class, she goes, oh, that's Lenny. I said, oh, this cat has a name? She goes, yeah, he'll come in and visit us from time to time, visit people. I don't know what the percentage, she said, was like 5 or 10%. But I was like, oh, cool, that's nice. I didn't feel any different afterwards, but I hope Lenny had a good time in there. Come on in, join the slippery ride inside Trey. It's a weird thing to say, Trey. And then another weird thing that happened, or cool thing that happened, is, you know, if you've read my book or you've seen my other videos on what happens after you die and before you choose to come back down here, and you have your soul guides and your soul council, and they're all, you know, on your team. And I try to talk to them a lot. They don't always talk back, or I'm learning to talk to them. But I had really nice communion with them that night. Like, the soul council was very feminine, and they go like, we love you, we love you, we love you. I was like, oh. And then my soul guide, he has a masculine energy for sure. And I was like, dude, thanks for sticking with me. I know I'm a lot to handle, but I think we made like a lot of progress in the last 10 years. Things are getting better and better. And then he just kind of stared off into the distance, gave it this 1,000-yard stare, and he goes, it was a process. And I just cracked up laughing. I was like, this guy has a very dry sense of humor. Of course my team's going to have a sense of humor. My God. So that was wonderful. Yeah, I went out, I laid in the grass, looked at the stars. I always felt like, you know, quite in control, and it was just a transcendent night. And I went listened to the music on my mattress, and I was like crying. It was so beautiful, and I just felt like this real connection with Earth and also everybody there, because not everyone was having a good time, and I could hear them vomiting and all this stuff. And you do actually form amazing friendships while you're there, right? It's kind of like everyone's going into war together or something in a way. And it was lovely. And you're kind of worried about all your friends. You can't wait to check in with them afterwards, and see how everything went. But yeah, night number 2 was just beautiful. Oh, one more thing before I leave. One more thing before I go. Even before you get my book, I'll recommend other books to you first that I think are good, things to get your mind around some of the stuff that I talk about in mine. And they're wonderful books, just incredible. One of them is Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. It talks what happens in the life between lives. And the second one is Dolores Cannon books, The 3 Waves of Volunteers for a New Earth, which is also fantastic. These are just wonderful primers just for life, and they're incredible rabbit holes. In fact, after my event in Scotland, where I went up to the spirit world for a while, I spent months and months and months trying to make some kind of sense of it. And then my little forest fairy friend, Emily, came over from Glenarchy, and she stayed with me during Christmas, and she brought me this book, Journey of Souls. It's like a paperback book. And I haven't read a paperback book in like 5 years. I read on Kindle or audiobooks. So I picked it up and I read it. I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. Like it really shifted a lot of things for me. So since then, I've now read dozens and dozens of books of this ilk. And so I'm very well read in this topic. So I'll link to my recommendations down below too. Okay, so join me in the next video. That is where I get another surgery, but this time from this alien, and it was the coolest thing ever. All right, see you next time. Love you guys. Bye.